Mr. Tucker Carlson. He has a new book out. It has been released today through Simon & Schuster. It is called The Long Slide, 30 Years in American Journalism. Welcome to the program, Tucker.
Hey, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
You bet. You bet. Let's start with first just the NSA scandal that's going on. How comfortable are you that we're going to find out what's really going on, that the watchdog for the intelligence agencies are going to be fair and independent?
Well, I don't think it's a scandal. I mean, it's totally, you should have the expectation when you live in America, if you criticize the regime, then they read your email. I mean, I learned, so I thought that was illegal and un-American and an assault on civil liberties. But I learned from the Daily Beast that actually, if you complain about it, then you hate America. So
okay.
Just
all right.
shut up and accept it. You have no privacy. The war on terror has been turned against American citizens, but you deserve it because you're a white supremacist.
Correct.
That's what I've been told.
Correct. It is. It's pretty phenomenal what is going on in America, especially with the intelligence agency. I mean, you now have not only Americans being spied on, you're being spied on, but you also have the Capitol Police becoming an intelligence agency, the post office.
It's so distressing. I mean, I moved to Washington when I was 15. My dad worked for the federal government. He worked with the CIA. I applied to work at the CIA when I graduated college in operations. I thought it was a totally honorable thing. We understood, and we're the same age about, so you remember, we understood the U.S. government and our intel agencies and our military and our federal law enforcement.
Honorable.
Designed to protect us, and honorable.
Yeah.
Exactly right. If the idea that your son would grow up to be an FBI agent, you're thinking, wow, I would be really proud of him.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to work there. I mean, that tells you how I felt about it. And the difference, look, you can't turn the awesome law enforcement and intel gathering powers of the federal government against American citizens on a wholesale basis. Like, that's the nightmare scenario. We have a lot of laws in place designed to prevent it, and now it's happening. And it's just bewildering to me that, like, no one says anything about it. Like, this is totally cool. This is the way it works. No, it's not cool. It's not the way it works. If you care about democracy, you're opposed to this with everything that you have.
If they can do this, what they did to Donald Trump, and they can do this to you, what makes the average American think they won't turn it on them easily? Because you'll have no chance.
That's exactly right. And I'm concluding things and saying things out loud that I just 3 years ago I never would have imagined I would say or think. I would have thought, oh, that's paranoid. That's crazy. I think I'm the least paranoid, sunniest, most optimistic, naive person I know. I mean, I never assume bad motives on the part of any American. I don't want to anyway. But I think if you're paying attention, you're deeply concerned about where we're going, and that's not a partisan point. If you care about basic civil liberties, like the right to disagree, the right to speak your mind, the right to follow your own conscience, the right to raise your family, roughly the way you want to. Nothing crazy. This is not ideological stuff.
Let me come back to that for a second on that. That's not an ideological point. And just ask you one last question on this. Do you know who unmasked you?
I don't know. I was in Washington for a funeral. I moved out of Washington after 35 years. I didn't have much choice, so I did. And I was back, and I ran into a very old, very close friend of mine who said, let's get together. I've got to talk to you about something. Who said in person, you are planning this trip to Russia. And I said, well, I haven't told anybody that, so I don't know how you'd know. And then this person told me that the NSA had been reading my electronic communications, my texts and emails, and had unmasked me and was going to spread this to news organizations to suggest that I was somehow a disloyal American.
Jeez.
And it actually scared me. I'm not normally rattled by stuff, but that's so over the top that I immediately called, like, the only person in politics I would ever talk to is a U.S. senator who's wise. And I said, this kind of scares me, honestly. What should I do? And he said, you got to go public with it because you don't have any other defense.
Yep.
I mean, you don't have actual power. You're just, the only power you have is to talk, which is true. And you need to do that right away as, prophylactically as a self-defense move.
Yep.
And so I did, and I felt like kind of a lunatic. You don't want to go on TV. I mean, would you want to go on the air and say they're spying on me? No, you sound like a nutcase.
Right.
But I didn't feel like I had a choice.
All right, so let me go back to where you just said this is not a partisan issue, because I think it is, and I think your book is kind of evidence of that. You talk about the 30 years in American journalism, the long slide, and you yourself say you couldn't do the things, you couldn't report the things today that you were doing back then. You couldn't. The system is no longer what it was when we thought, at least, we all agreed with each other and we were all seeking the same outcome. I don't think all Americans even agree on your right to privacy and your right of freedom of speech anymore.
Well, you're absolutely right. And it's kind of, I mean, I'm sure you have this experience every day. Things are changing so quickly. You wake up in a brand new country, but it's hard to get perspective on how profound the change is because there are so few mile markers. You know, you don't, it just seems like, oh, I guess it's always been this way. Going back and reading 30 years of journalism, mostly magazine journalism, was just kind of a shock. I mean, a lot of the pieces in the book I wrote for the New York Times. Can you imagine? Esquire magazine. I wrote for the Washington Post. I wrote for GQ. There's no chance I would ever. I wrote for the New Republic.
I know.
I also had a lot of friends a lot of friends, not just a few, like a lot, who were Democrats. I went hunting with them. I went on trips with them. I hunted with them all my life. And now that's impossible. I mean, they wouldn't have me. I've never been very partisan. I'm not super impressed by the Republican Party, that's for sure. I don't like the Democratic Party, but I don't hate people because of their voter ID, because of who they vote for. That's not my temperament. And so reading this, I really got the sense that, boy, it's a completely different world. We are polarized to the point where you wonder how we reach agreement on anything. And to your point, what do we agree on? What do we have in common? This has always been a multiracial country with no state religion. We've always been, in some sense, a diverse country. Mm-hmm. And that's great. I like that. But you have to have something that unites you, something that we all agree on. Like, why are we all living on this continent together, sharing a common federal government, if we don't agree on anything? So what do we agree on? What is the American creed that unites us? And increasingly, it's hard to answer that question.
It used to be the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
It used to be the Bill of Rights. And I contend you could get maybe a majority, a slim majority, to disagree with maybe 8 of the first 10 in the Bill of Rights. You have nothing left if you don't have the Bill of Rights.
Well, I mean, that's exactly right. It's at this point, if you can't agree on that, let's just be totally blunt. Countries don't hang together because they hang together naturally. There's a centrifugal force is a physics principle, and this is a huge country, and it's diverse on every level, not just ethnically but geographically. People, the country won't hang together unless we work intentionally and ceaselessly to create a reason for it to hang together. And it can't just be force. It can't just be, we control the Pentagon, obey. That's not enough. You need consent of the governed. And the majority needs to agree that we're in this together for a reason because we share this in common. And if you set out to destroy those bonds, if you set out to increase tribalism, which is what they're doing, no, your first loyalty is to your ethnic group. Are you joking? You're a Hutu, you're a Tutsi? Like, how do you think that ends? It's so insane. And so I just think we need a national movement starting like this afternoon to figure out what it is we have in common and to emphasize that, because otherwise, it's just very clear where this is going to go.
What, when you look at other countries, for a long time, we were, we got to be more like Europe. We got to be. In some ways, I'd love to be like some of the countries in Europe. Some of the countries in Europe are preaching against us. They're like, don't follow America. Whatever poison is coming out of there, don't do it. And I've heard you talk about Hungary and the way that the government is now in Hungary. They are more free than we are.
Well, I mean, it's just funny to be in your 50s because you dimly remember a life before this. And what you just said just makes me laugh because I was in Europe last week and I thought that the whole time. We mocked Europe. I mean, constantly mocked Europe. And how sad is it? I take no joy in noting what's true, which is if you're in Budapest and you disagree with the ruling party, you don't need armed bodyguards. You're not going to be silenced. The majority of media in Hungary are opposed to the ruling party. The ruling party may lose in the coming elections. And that's how things work in a representative democracy. Like you have peaceful transfers of power and people are allowed to say what they think, and store windows aren't smashed because they disagree with the COVID policy or the Black Lives Matter or the trans policy. It's like, it's all right. How is that not freer? It is freer. It is and that just crushes me.
I know. Me too. Let me ask you, because I finished the last book I did. I've been with Simon & Schuster for 20 years, and I want nothing to do with John Karp, the CEO. They started firing conservatives at Simon & Schuster, started closing things down, and it made no sense to me. You have this publisher, Simon & Schuster, is your publisher for this book. And
yeah, that's right.
You go after them in the book. I mean, that takes balls.
Well, yeah, I mean, I told them I was going to. I mean, there's something. Well, they published it, so they know perfectly well what's in it. And in fact, I dedicated it to John Karp effectively. So, they know. But look, it's really simple. They're one of the most powerful book publishers in the world. Mm-hmm. They should not be abetting censorship. The whole point of publishing and of journalism is to keep open this free exchange of ideas. You don't agree with at least half of them, but it's important for people to be able to voice them. In fact, it's essential. You can't have a democracy without that. So you can't be for censorship. And they are. And I was shocked when they canceled Josh Hawley's book because they didn't like his vote. You may not like his vote. Okay, that's all right. But Josh Hawley has a right to air his views. They canceled his book. They issued a press release calling him a terrorist. And I watched this with my jaw open, knowing that I had a book due to them. So I called John Karp and I said, what is this? And I said, I feel a moral obligation to report this out because I'm getting paid by Simon & Schuster. I'm participating in this. I'm benefiting from your censorship, and I feel bad about that. So I'm going to write about it. And if you don't want to publish the book, you don't have to. And I think they really felt trapped because they knew that if they canceled my book, I was going to go after them. Which I certainly would. So it was just one of these weird circumstances where I got to report out censorship in real time, and I thought that I should. I felt it was my duty to do that.
Well, good for you. I'm no longer with Simon & Schuster. My contract expired, and I couldn't be happier. Although my next book is book is coming out self-published, and I don't know anybody of my size that has ever tried that before. So we'll see how it works out.
When is that? I mean, I would love to talk to you about that because that seems like the future. I mean, why are we putting all our ideas into the hands of censors? I mean, why are we participating in the system?
It is the system. I mean, it's the same. I'm in the same place I was in, 10 years ago when I started the Blaze TV, where it didn't make any sense. All the tools aren't really there. Nobody's actually breaking the molds on this, but it has to be done because I'm not going to sit and be held hostage by a corrupt system. It's ridiculous.
I look back and I realize how stupid when you started Blaze TV, I was like, what? You were like the biggest guy in cable news. Why don't you just stay in cable news? Why make the effort to do this? And I'm just so grateful that you did. I really, really am. And I'm grateful I'm not saying this, by the way, as flattery. I mean it totally sincerely. The fact that you're self-publishing, that you built your own thing, those turned out to be incredibly prescient and important decisions because the current system is unsustainable. We don't have freedom of the press. We have to build our own. And so thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Well, as you know, because I write to you from time to time just to thank you for your monologues and your bravery. Thank you for standing up. I've been in your position. I know what it's like. I know what it's like for your wife and your children. And I truly pray for you and admire your courage, Tucker. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Glenn. Thank you.
You bet. The name of the book that you can get. It's out today. The Long Slide, 30 Years in American Journalism with Tucker Carlson. By the way, Tucker is going to be doing a podcast with me in the next couple of weeks, so we'll have a good hour or so to be able to further our conversation.